we would like to cross over to Parliament, where we have the Senate Committee on the Public Accounts and Investments Committee, which is speaking to the Lands CS on the Ruaraka School land probe. Let's listen into what's happening there.
Subdivision. So the company did not proceed with the subdivision. So the title is still the freehold title that was given to them in 1981.
So when they were subdividing the 168.5
yes,
to 4 parcels,
yes,
they did not go through the change of user to go to subleases.
Honorable Chair, what I know is that the current parcel in question is freehold, and it's indicated by the search. Whether at that point they had been given change of user is not clear, but from the search and from our records, the title is a freehold title, as at now.
Senator Matangi?
Yes, Chair. What I may want to understand from the PS, from the CS on this specific question is on that specific land itself, the one that's owned by Hewlands and Afrisum, as of now in your records, is there any charge on that land? As of now?
Yes, Honorable Chair, there's a charge.
Charge to who? Yes.
Dated. A charge, okay, sorry. There's an encumbrance, there's a caveat, dated the 1st of March, placed by the registrar to secure the government's interest in the land because of the schools, and because of, I think, the GSU land. But there's also a charge by Consolidated Bank.
Yes.
Yes.
Which has not been discharged as of now?
Not yet. The title is with the Attorney General.
Okay, we could let the CS proceed, because I think the question on encumbrances is coming up.
Yes.
So you are on point number 12.
Yes.
Okay, before we leave point number 12, so we've requested for the 1981 subdivision plan.
Yes.
And please also inform the committee what the conditions for subdivision were in 1981, and whether surrender of land for public utilities was part of those conditions. 1981. So you could proceed.
All right.
I'm sorry, today being a Monday, is it possible that we could get these documents before the close of the week, and any other subsequent documents?
Yes, Honorable Chair, it's
Thank
possible. May I proceed to question number 2? All right. On question number 2, Honorable Chair, you had sought to know whether there's an encumbrance on the parcel as of January 2018. Yes, there's a caveat on the land, but the caveat was placed on the 1st of March by the registrar, claiming an interest under Section 76 of the Land Registration Act, number 3 of 2012. The search is attached, indicating the caveat. May I proceed to question number 3?
Yes, members, you've seen the... How is it referenced?
It's Annex 3. Yeah. Yeah. The last sentence on encumbrances.
Okay, and the other one you referred to by a bank, or you're coming to it?
No, I'm not coming to it because it was not part of your questions, but it's there. It's because we had responded to the same question in the National Assembly, so the documentation is there and we can provide them by the end of this session.
Parliament consists of 2 chambers.
Yes, I know
the National Assembly and the Senate. They are distinct but interdependent. So please serve Senate with the documents without referring to what has gone to the National Assembly. Please take note of that.
Yeah, Honorable Chair, I meant to say that it was not one of the questions you had requested, but we have the documentation because we had provided to a separate House of Parliament.
So yes, the question was whether there are encumbrances on the parcel of land.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that there was an encumbrance
Yes.
in the form of an instrument, bank instrument.
Yeah.
I think that was within the scope of what we had requested.
Right.
It would be important for us to understand all encumbrances
Right.
on the land.
All right, it shall be provided. May I move to question number 3?
Yes, please.
All right.
Prof, before we move on.
Just a very small question, CS.
Yes, please.
It's important at this stage to know whether the caveat which was placed at that stage of time indicated an interest of government vis-a-vis the 2 schools or otherwise, or was this another interest altogether unrelated to the two schools. That's the only clarification I would want to seek from UCS, please.
Honorable Chair, the interest then was unrelated because under the same parcel of land in a different matter, the government had purchased part of this land to secure the GSU headquarters. So that caveat, that's why the title is with the Attorney General. At that point, the Attorney General took over the title to secure that particular interest. But in regard to the two schools, the caveat of the 1st of March secures that interest. Thank you.
Yeah, Wamatangi, something like that?
Yes, just a little further clarification on that particular registered government interest on the purchase. What specific amount of land, or what is the size of the land as registered that the government had registered interest on?
As at now, Honorable Chair, the 96 acres has yet to be subdivided. So the caveat is on the entire parcel of land.
So is it deemed then to mean that then the caveat was not specific to either the details of the purchase, the size of the land, or the amount that the government had paid in respect of this land? Are we saying that this land was coveted by government as an entire piece, and is the ministry aware then at this time whether government was intending either to buy a part of it or all of it, other than just the reference in the records? That's what I'm asking.
Proceeds, yes.
Honorable Chair, the caveat is on the entire parcel of land, and the understanding was that the land would then be subdivided after the government has transacted or paid in full for the parcel that it was acquiring in the interest of the schools.
Okay, Chair. Yes, that's what I'd asked, whether it is within your knowledge or the ministry as to what specific amount of land the government was registering an interest, although the subdivision has not yet occurred. Yeah, but what is the specific amount of land?
On this particular issue, Honorable Chair, there is no specific.
Chair, I don't know whether you want me to maybe to expand that a little bit out of that particular answer. The reason I ask that question, CS, is because from submissions from other invitees into this committee, documents have been also brought to this committee from the Office of the President, which also have claimed that government paid a total of 64 million for the purchase of that land, and referred to as the entire of the land, with that particular reference number. So the letter is specific, says that government purchased this land, title number this and this, for this amount, way back in the 1989. So that's what we want to understand from your records there. Does it specify, which specific?
Honorable Chair, the caveat is on the entire parcel, but I'm aware that in a court matter in 2012, the judge ruled that the government hadn't purchased the entire parcel of land. I'm aware of that court ruling, but as far as this caveat is concerned, it's on the entire parcel of land.
Okay, Chair, I think then maybe as we finalize in the discussion, you may be able to pick it up from as the CS, that not only referencing to the matter that was in court, that was a different matter,
Yes.
but government has also another interest on it via correspondence and letter written and signed by the former Minister for Internal Security, Zakayo Cheriot, and also by the former Head of Public and Civil Service, Philip Leakey, that government had paid a total of 64 million for this particular land in 1989, with a specific date, actually, 18th of August 1988. That was the date of purchase. And on 12th of September 2000, government paid a total of 19,765,000 for the rates of that land from 1988 up to 1997. So those are two different issues. So that's what we're saying. If you can also, specifically now address yourself to that, even if it's not in the documents that you have with you here, but in subsequent documents, because definitely this transaction must be registered,
Yes.
within your name. Yeah.
Chair can undertake to take it up.
Oh, okay. So I think we can move on. We, however, have taken note that the date on which that charge was registered, it's in 2018.
2018, 1st of March. 100%.
1st of March. And members, you remember, government paid for part of the land where the GSU sits. Way back in 20, do you recollect?
I think in January, Honorable Chair. It should have been January 20.
No, that's for the schools.
But
GSU, for the GSU land?
I think it was 2012. I'm not too sure.
2012.
I think.
So there was no charge on that interest at that point in time. The only time the government indicated an interest in land was 2018. None was registered in respect to the land that was bought for GSU. It's 2018.
The caveat is 2018, yes.
The one that is on the land?
Currently,
by
yes,
government?
Yes.
When was the first interest by government registered on the land? 2018 or before?
2018.
2018. Nothing prior to that.
But there's a charge by a bank.
Which you've,
But by government, 2018.
By government, 2018.
Yes.
So the government essentially started paying for the GSU land without indicating its interest in the piece of land, basically from the records.
Yeah.
That the interest was only indicated in March 2018,
Yes.
after the government had paid 1.5 billion Kenya shillings. For the,
in this particular case?
Yes, in this particular case.
Yes, Honorable Chair.
Whose responsibility was it to register the charge? Was it the ministry or it was the National Land Commission?
In this case, Honorable Chair, it should be the National Land Commission and the Ministry of Education.
And the Ministry of Education.
Yes.
So your job is just to enter the record.
Yes.
But it is initiated by NLC and the entity that is purchasing the
By
land.
the transacting parties.
Okay.
Yes.
Prof.
Chair, at that stage, up to the point where you are, Madam CS, is it correct to say that the government had absolutely no interest in the piece of land other than at that time when you started engaging yourselves with the GSU and then the schools, or would that be a wrong statement to make?
I think it would be a wrong statement, Honorable Chair. What should have happened is maybe process was not properly followed, but I think government had interest. Because for government to pay that kind of money, it clearly has an interest. But maybe process was not properly followed at that time.
I think dealing with available documentation, as far as we are concerned, this interest was only indicated on 1st of March 2018. Prior to that, there was no formal record of government interest on the land.
That's correct, Honorable Chair.
Okay.
Chair, just a quick one. Last one. CS, in 2014, via Gazette Notice 6055, that was on 29th August 2014.
Is it 2014?
2014, yes. Government had compensated over the same land by Kenya Urban Rural Roads Authority. That was in 2014, and there's a Gazette notice there. Was this interest by government registered at all after paying? That was in 2014. There was no.
No.
So, Chair, you remember that there were monies that were paid on the same land by Kura. That was 2.76 hectares of the same. Compensation was paid by Kura. That was in 2014, and then also Kura had paid another 786 million in 2016 on the same. And there was now the current 1.5 billion. And yes, there were those two payments. That was in 2014 and 2016. So that was never registered.
Cabinet? No.
No, and government interest was not registered even at that time at all. So ordinary, just by way of statement, what I wanted to hear, as the Minister of Lands, if then you're answering to that question now, is it ordinary or is it procedural that government then would have its interest unentered or unregistered in that particular land after payments in 2014? Would you say that's irregular or irregular?
Honorable Chair, I think I already alluded to the fact that proper process was not followed.
So it's irregular, that's what you're saying?
Proper process wasn't followed.
Well, it makes it irregular. It doesn't make it regular. I mean, 6 years, but the process is not followed.
It depends on which school you went to.
I think government didn't follow due process in that matter.
Yes.
So whether regular or irregular, it's a question of interpretation, but the process wasn't followed.
Maybe if you went to a mission school, you are more polite. If you went to Kiambu High School, you'd say it the way it is, that it was irregular. It's semantics, but the point is driven. That I think the point resonates with what you've said, using different words. We allow the CS to proceed, or Kibiru, you have one matter on that?
For knowledge, it's good also to learn. Just for knowledge, the government paid some money. Probably you give us the record or you familiarize us with the records in 2014 for, I believe it's for loot. It means then there was to be a title for 2.6 hectares. At what point in time or how long would it take for the government to get that title from the 96 acres once they have paid?
Usually, Honorable Chair, if there's no encumbrance on a title, it's a fairly straightforward process. But as I indicated earlier, there's a charge to that title, and that is why the title is with the Attorney General. Because when the government paid for the GSU land, I think part of the negotiations in court were that part of the payment was to pay off Consolidated Bank for the monies that was lent to the company. So that is why the title is with the AG. That title currently sits with the Attorney General.
But Chair, maybe...
But if there's no encumbrance, Honorable Chair, transacting in land is a fairly straightforward process.
Chair, maybe for me to get it clearer, I thought in the Kura, what Kura paid in 2016 was in full, what they needed. And they still don't have a title. And they are aware there were all these encumbrances.
I don't think they would have a title, Honorable Chair, because as I indicated, there are other claimants to the land because of the charge from the bank. So until government or the parties clear that loan, then the title will be free and the land can then be subdivided. I think it is in that context and spirit that the encumbrance of 1st of March was placed.
Could it then be fair to request the CS, because we were on a specific matter, but we allow supplementary issues as long as they are related to what we are pursuing, for you to write back to the Senate and update us on the status of transfer of title to government for the parcels of land for which they've paid fully. And in our records, we know that the government paid close to 800 million shillings through Kura for roads and easements on the land. And if there are other transactions that the government has undertaken on that piece of land, just give us an update as far as the transfer of title or ownership is concerned. Members, because since the first charge was entered just in March 2018, we would be interested to know that the 800 million paid to Kura, paid through Kura, public interest and public funds are safeguarded. That amount of money was paid for a specific acreage. It was not for something in the air. It was for land. And the 96 acres still remains intact. And yet government had already paid in full for part of the roads and easements on that land. It would be important for us to understand that. The status for the Kura payment, the status for the GSU payment. And then for the schools, I think that's why we are here. I'm sure as you go along, we'll get answers.
Okay, thank you.
We can proceed.
I can proceed to question number 3?
Yes.
All right. On question number 3, Honorable Chair, the committee had sought to know whether the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning had acquired ownership documents for part of the land purchased for roads and the general service units. I think it's what we've been discussing, Honorable Chair. but I wish to respond as follows. The Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning was not party to the purchase of land for roads and the General Service Unit. In this case, in the case of the former, responsibility and ownership of land would lie with the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, and in the case of the latter, the General Service Unit, the responsibility would lie with the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government. So it is those two government ministries that would be responsible for ensuring that they have the title for what they have paid for.
Maybe at this point, I would like us to reflect on the meaning of this term we were taught in civics called collective responsibility. Because ultimately, you are not operating as CS for lands in the Republic of Lands. You are doing it in the Republic of Kenya, where there are other colleagues within the cabinet. And I believe that the intention here was really not just specific focus on the Ministry of Lands, but on the government. And so, where you have said that responsibility lies with the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, you are the Lands Ministry. In the spirit of that collective responsibility, could you just tell us whether the information we need exists or it does not exist?
While it is true, Honorable Chair, that we are bound by the spirit of collective responsibility, several government ministries, departments, and agencies sign contracts with other parties, and we may not all be aware of those contracts or privy to them. So as the Ministry of Lands, I really can't be privy to the agreements between other government departments and other agencies, because they have the responsibility to follow them through. So I would not have that documentation, Honorable Chair, in which case I am not able to respond competently to those two questions. You would have to get that from the relevant ministries.
In your registry function, do you do it for the sake of Ministry of Lands or for the sake of the Republic of Kenya that has all these ministries?
Honorable Chair, we keep records for all parcels of land in Kenya, all.
Any other? Yes, Professor?
Yeah, just for clarity purposes, at some stage, the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure had an interest either through Kura or through the General Service Unit. At some level, you also indicated there was stamp duty paid. So how do you pay stamp duty on land which has not already been demarcated and the title deed issued? On what basis would that stamp duty be paid? Or for that matter, outstanding in any way?
Honorable Chair, on this particular case, I would have to check because I don't have that information here with me. I'd have to check.
Okay, Senator Kibiru.
So it means that the two entities, the two government entities still owes the government through the Ministry of Lands and Planning, land leads and landed.
That's the information I said I sought to be allowed to check, Honorable Chair, because I would have to go to the records and check. I can provide it in the course of the week.
Okay, CS, you proceed, but I want to note as follows that as a Ministry for Lands, I know there have been a lot of changes, transition with NLC coming into the picture, and sometimes your role is not very well defined. But as a committee, I would have a problem having to call all the ministers in the Republic of Kenya to answer things that ideally ought to have been consolidated and where I would have one point of reference. On land matters, on ownership or decisions around land undertaken by the national government, I would expect that between NLC and Ministry of Lands would get these answers, instead of being directed to Ministry of Transport, instead of being directed to Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government. I think there's a problem there, and it is either it's a constitutional or a statutory problem, or it is just a problem of things, people not working together cohesively in government. We can proceed.
Proceed, okay. On question number 4, Honorable Chair, if you allow me to proceed, you had sought to know whether the ministry has acquired ownership documents for 196 houses erected on the parcel of land approximately 17.8 acres, purchased by government and paid for in full, through an agreement dated 18th of August 1988 between the defunct Kenya Post and Telecommunications Corporation and the Permanent Secretary in the Office of the President. I wish to respond as follows, Honorable Chair. The Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning was not and is not privy to the agreement dated the 18th of August 1988. We are not in a position to answer to the question as to whether or not the ministry responsible, has the documents for the acquired houses. That responsibility, I will reiterate again, Honorable Chair, would lie with the parent ministry, because agreements between ministries and different agencies inside and outside government are kept by the ministry and the Attorney General's office. So I would not be in a position to answer what happened to that documentation.
I think let's address ourselves to this matter. Because as we proceed, we might find that you will tell us you don't know anything because things are being handled by other ministries. What is the institutional framework right now? Ministry of Lands, what is your job? Just for our benefit and for the benefit of those Kenyans who are watching.
In a nutshell, Honorable Chair, land administration and management, basically keeping records of land in Kenya, transactions on land, and making sure that the records are accessible when and if required by other agencies.
So keeping records, it means that you have all records of lands transactions in this republic?
Yes, we do.
So why do you send us to other ministries when you have all those records? And it is those records that we are asking for.
I think in this case, Honorable Chair, you requested to know whether we have documents relating to purchase of some housing units on the particular parcel of land.
Yes, the houses exist on land.
Yes.
And if there was purchase of houses, there would be a subsequent purchase of land. And that transaction would then be in your record. If it is not in your record, then we assume it does not exist. Anything to do with land, if you tell us you don't know, we go to another ministry, it means it does not exist. Because it is your job to keep records and details of transactions on land in this republic.
Chair, maybe.
Yeah, Senator Manga?
Okay, maybe I would want to know who gives the fee note of stamp duty, for stamp duty to be paid.
The CS for Lands and Physical Planning, Farida Karoney, before the Senate's Public Accounts and Investments Committee about the Ruaraka land debacle, pretty much, which has been in the media for a while now, and answering some questions, and we shall be picking that up. And Seth Olale is in the building there and will be giving us an update when we get an opportunity to get him. But for now, the proceedings continue, and we shall be getting updates as we go along.